and welcome to another Wellbeing Wednesday. I am Karen Keener, the host and the Sovereign Mom, and I am here today talking to Rae Luskin, who is an amazing artist. She is a kind of a dream catcher of sorts. She helps people channel their emotions and their healing through the practice of art. She's amazing. She's written 4 books. And she's just done all the self-help stuff, and she's kind of collated it down to this brilliant, easy, applicable thing that you could even have your kindergartners do. So welcome, Rae, to my show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And it's just such a cool thing to have you with all these resources here, because this show is all about sharing healing and well-being resources. So I'm just stoked that you're here to join me.
Well, I'm really grateful. It's been a while since I've done a podcast, so I'm really happy. And to be here and share the journey that I've been on and the tools that have made such a difference in my own personal life and healing.
So do you want to kick it off by kind of giving my viewers a little window into your backstory? Is actually kind of similar to my backstory, in that I think we were both, as new mothers or young mothers, that just hit like a wall of sorts, dealing with family trauma and stuff like that. So please share your story.
All right. So it was like 1985. So I've been on this journey a really long time, ladies. And I don't know if you have gentlemen who are listening too. But it was like 1985 and I could barely get out of bed. I was so depressed. Now I've been in talk therapy for 12 years. So it got me to the point I could get married, have a family, and that was great. But I was miserable. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book Anna Karenina, but in it, she stands in front of a train track and kills herself. Well, I lived right on the train track. So all I could think about was that. And so, I get them off to school, I curl up in fetal position. The dishes were piling up, the laundry, everything. I just couldn't function anymore. All I could think about is I wanted to end the pain. And so I decided, though, I'm going to write a list of all the bad things that happened to me. And I stopped at like 88. It was like going through the journey of life. And we've all suffered traumas of different levels throughout our lives. The big one for me was I was sexually abused by my grandfather from age 7 to 13. So that had a huge impact on my life. And then other things happened, obviously, along the way. And I just couldn't seem to get over these hurdles. And I was always depressed. And I kept everything a secret. My neighbors, I figured if they knew who I was, they'd run for the hills. Like, oh my God, look at her. And she's a mess and blah, blah. So I pretended to be happy, which so many of us do. We pretend we're so together and then we act like that. But then home, we're crying our eyes out and just, we have no inner resources, no resilience to withstand this stuff. And so, long and short, I ended up writing a short list, which my kids were the part of the short list. And I said, okay, I'm going to do everything in my power to heal. I don't care what it is. I'm it. So I became a self-help junkie. That is exactly what I went and got every book I could think of. The first 2 books I got were Creative Visualization by Shakti Kwan. And the other one was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. That's been my mantra my whole life since then, but I guess I want to skip ahead a little bit. As you said, I was an artist, but this happened in my grandfather's art studio. So there was a double whammy there, it's like, yeah. So, in college, I had actually I always wanted to be Ray, Rembrandt, and Rubens. That was my thing. And I got to college freshman year and the teacher said, "You are the worst artist I've ever seen. Get out of my class." And I had no confidence and I left and I became an art history major. I didn't paint for 12 years and I didn't know I was having a flashback because I didn't know what it was called. It was art studio with oil paints and that's what it was, so it was interesting. But, I always had crayons around. I always did art with my kids. So one day I actually just took out a crayon and I started scribbling. And it was the most amazing things. I was just scribbling, and it was like, oh my God, it was just this pain came out of me. I didn't know about somatic response. I didn't know we store trauma in ourselves. This was not the time that I was educated on any of this, but it was like, it was an amazing tool. And people started to say to me, what's different? Did you, color your hair? Did you do this? Did you lose weight? You seem happy. And that is what started me on the journey of creativity as a healing tool. And they have done numerous studies, and it is a major tool. And yet most people don't know anything about it.
So you mentioned somatic response, and I think I know what that means, but can you like expound on that?
It's whenever we have a trauma, it is stored literally in our cells.
Yes.
And unless we find a way to release them, they're there. And
Right.
how many times do we keep telling ourselves the same story over and over, or react the same way because we've never dealt with that piece of the trauma? Some of the tools I've used, I've done dance therapy over the years, and that was wonderful. I danced out. She had me with hula hoops, and I'm swinging on my arms, or I had like scarves. So all these ways I could move my body and change how I was feeling. I didn't know that existed. Now, Tony Robbins talks about that all the time now. He was one of the first personal growth people who did that. We were talking about, you can change your stance, stand up tall, take a walk. Or then we start talking about power moves. When I speak, I always have a power move. So mine is, one of it is the Wonder Woman, cross your wrist, and then I spin around like Rocky, so yeah, exactly. I put my hands on my hips. That's the first piece, actually. And then, because I think about that, and that's my power stance. So we can do things by changing our posture.
Yes. I think, okay, so I was a massage therapist for 25 years, and later in my career, I took a cranial sacral class, and in the class,
you live too far away. I'd come to you. You just live too far away.
I don't practice anymore, but I did it for like 25 years. And later in my journey of studying massage, different therapies, when I took cranial sacral, one of the girls did this cranial sacral release on my neck. And all of a sudden I was flooded with all these memories of giving a bazillion people massages and not ever getting any massages for myself and not healing myself. And I just burst out crying. It just like poured out. I think it was in there.
Stuck in your neck.
Yeah.
Totally. That's it. I mean, I don't know when you did it. Did you ever do like reflexology and things like that on people's hands and feet? The same thing. You touch a point and it's like, oh my God, you're crying, you're moving. It's like, it just takes you back to some part of your history because it's stored in your body.
Yes. I worked on insomniacs, and I could get them all to like within seconds fall asleep on my table, just like with some different magic moves and stuff. So you just don't know where that like sleepy place is until somebody else unlocks it, and it can be in your body. So I guess I am more familiar with the somatic response than other people. Probably I just didn't know the terminology. I was guessing that's what that terminology meant.
Right.
So
did you ever get into what's the name of it? It's a very deep massage, I can't think of the name, but it was the most painful experience I'd ever done, where they do a series of 7. You get really
that's Rolfing.
Yes, Rolfing. Thank you.
Yeah, I have not had Rolfing. There's a guy that's really close to me that does it, and I've been looking into doing it recently since I had my breast reduction surgery and thought I need to reposture myself now that I don't have the gigantic boobs. It would help.
I have them. So. But I did Rolfing. It was the most painful thing I'd ever been through. And it was interesting because of my trauma, when they got into my inner thighs and that area, I felt nothing. Anything around that area, I felt nothing because my body had shut down. I could not feel in my pelvic at all. And then they wanted to go into my mouth, and I said, no, you can't go in my mouth. There is no way. And I stopped, but I got, to like last one or so. But again, we don't know what our bodies are capable of doing, whether it's shutting down or, being confused by what's going on.
Hmm. So the healing modality you kind of tapped into, this was in the 80s. So that, like, a lot of people are talking about art therapy now, but back then it was not
And
a
it
thing.
wasn't.
It
It
didn't
was,
exist at all, right? Like it was
yeah,
like
I
you
mean, it
invented
was
it.
there, but it wasn't taken seriously.
Yeah.
Honestly, it really wasn't taken seriously. There were people practicing, but it wasn't well known. And at that point, I tried to write my healing book, which I called The Odyssey of Healing Survivor to Thriver. And I was sharing my artwork and some of my journal pages and my visioning and, all these pieces. And I took them to one of these healing conferences. This is way before your time, but it was called Body and Soul. And it was put together by transpersonal psychologists. And so I followed them around the country, and I went, and Joan Borysenko was one of the leaders, Larry Dossey at the time, Gene Shinobola. Those were the people who were really there.
Wait, what was Larry Dossey's book? Because I know I read it
This
and I
was
know it.
about the power of prayer.
That's okay. Did he have another one as well? Or was that
Uh,
the
that could be, I just don't know it.
okay? I remember, does that name almost sounds like somebody I know personally, because I remember Larry Dossey MD being like this, but this was like in the 90s, early 90s that I read
Okay,
his
I'm
book.
sure he wrote another book beyond that, the one we had, but I took my book that I had written to them, and they said, your story's not enough. There had never been anybody who was dealing with, I was doing all the alternative modalities at that point, talking about the different, there was a woman who did Radix. So Radix was, she had a padded room, and she'd give me assignments to go beat the mattresses and stuff. And then we talk about it. And so all the things that I was going into.
You were a pioneer.
I really was, and even spirituality. I said, how many people were quote, because of their religion, things that happened, and you had to become spiritual. So this was my whole premise. But so people just like, no, 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 you can't do that. It wasn't accepted at the time. And so they said, go back and, get other people. So I actually sent out, I have a background in marketing, in urban planning. So I know how to write a marketing research questionnaire and do all that kind of stuff. So I wrote an 11-page questionnaire, and I got 150 responses from people. And the stories were amazing. And it proved all my points, but I never wrote the book. I didn't have the confidence and the courage to do it. I kept the voice of, who do you think you are, kept coming up. And so I never did. Shared the story in other places and in different arenas and stuff like that. But no, when I talked about art for healing, like, huh? But I mean, I love one of my favorite stories is, I remember this woman rehabbed her house, and every part of her house was a part of her body and her story, So there are so many ways to do different things. We talked about music, music therapy, which was not really recognized either. So as a big healing tool. At that point, it was really therapy, just talk therapy for a long time.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up music, because one of my girlfriends on social media was talking about getting closure, and I was like, my go-to for closure is like finding a song and singing it out, and like feeling to get over a relationship or a heartbreak was like finding a song about moving on and releasing, and then singing it until it just almost became ridiculous to me to sing it anymore. Like, that's just nonsense that I'm still singing this song. And then it was gone. And then it was like, I was over it, and it helped so much. And so I posted my own thing just this week on social media about what are your favorite songs to help you get closure. And a lot of people responded with so many different, there's wild variation in how people get over being wronged or just hurt or heartbreak. One of the things that I think is funny, because I'm a Scorpio, and I think that probably plays into this, is that, one of my songs.
What is Scorpio? What's your birthday?
November 17.
Okay, because that's what I thought, but I just want to double check, because that's my granddaughter's birthday, one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, Janie's got a gun and goodbye, Earl, really, Helen. Very scorpionic, kind of revengeful. And then I had listened to one of your interviews this week also, where you were talking about how you use a certain healing tool about, getting rid of that person in your life in a way that just makes them gone. But you also have like a healing follow-up. Share that. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like about,
Create and destroy, that one?
yeah, the create and destroy. That's
Destroy.
it.
Okay, I had heard this. There was a woman in Chicago. My sister and I both went. She had a similar experience as I did, but we've handled it very differently. But she would tell us, "I want you to destroy the person." I just imagine, what do you want to boil them in oil? Throw them in. I would throw my grandfather in the microwave, but I couldn't leave him undone, like blown up. So then I'd recreate them. That was just me, because that just didn't feel right. But she gave us this tool and people were aghast. I mean, they were like, "Oh my God, you can't do that." I said, "I'm only thinking about it. I'm not doing it, but there's sometimes you've got to figure out a way to do that stuff. And forgiveness doesn't come just because you always want it to. You have to
Right.
forgive yourself, you have to work on it, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I practice forgiveness really many ways over the
I
years.
think it's a very common thing for Scorpios to fantasize about revenge to move on.
I
And
didn't
like,
know that.
yeah, I suspect, because we're very like, we tend to be vengeful people. So if we're not doing it, acting it out, we're thinking about it. So, but I really love that you had like this heal, recreate, rebuild that relationship on different terms. And I think for me, I got to a point in my life where I just don't even have to destroy people anymore in my mind.
Yeah,
I can almost, now that I practiced it so much, I can get to the feeling of what is it like if you're gone,
right.
just gone, not because I am I doing, just gone from my life, like just not a part of it. What what would what would the ideal relationship be if we had an ideal relationship? And if you were everything that I wanted you to be, what would you say to me? What advice would you give me? And then I
Those
get
are
that
all great
gift.
questions. I mean, those are the questions people need to ask themselves, because it is our responsibility to heal. We have a choice. I truly believe we have a choice to heal, to forgive, and it's not for the other person to make them all happy, and it's all about us. I spent
Yes.
a long time being really angry, at different things. I got divorced too. So, there were other points in my life, and it's like, okay, I can spend my life being angry or choose to go on to something else. And it's like, I don't know what you did as far as forgiveness and things. So like, I'm a big person as far as affirmations and things like that. And Catherine Ponder had 70 times 7. You should write it, but I did it slightly differently. So I would write, "I forgive you." And then I put a line down the middle of the paper and I say, "No way in hell, excuse my language." And I keep writing it until I had nothing left to say to that person. Those are the kinds of things that I
Yeah,
chose to do.
working it out, getting it out
Yeah,
of your system instead of
yeah,
just like trying to bypass it with forgiveness. Yeah.
right. We have to do things, just like whether it's, even the massage or anything to release it that you're talking about, the music, dance it out. I mean, I am big on, I'll just stand here and dance, and it's like, sometimes I want to be happy, sometimes I want to just let go and be angry, and I have different playlists, and most of my stuff is pretty empowering music now, but sometimes it's like, okay, I just want to have fun. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember you also mentioned that you're a fan of Karen Drucker, who
Mhm.
I've met a couple of times before, because I was involved in centers for spiritual living or religious science and stuff like that. And I was singing in the choirs, and she would come and sing, and we would do
Oh,
backups with her and stuff. So she's really a fun person, like hilarious. And our church had like this incredible band of like jazz musicians, like really like some of the best jazz musicians in Southern California. And so she would come and they
okay,
would
where
do
in
like a
California? I'm just curious. Where were you?
uh the church was in Costa Mesa, but I grew up in Huntington Beach and stuff.
Okay, just trying to put it in perspective,
Orange
because
County.
yeah, my son, lives in Redondo Beach with his
Oh,
family.
okay. Yeah.
So I know the area, and because I did go to the church in yeah, down there. I went
You
to
went to
just
Michael's.
no, not to Michael's Agape, to the other one, the religious science. There was a different one.
Hmm.
I don't know. I got some pamphlet and I walked around for a day. It
Oh,
was
okay.
I am very ecumenical. I am like by birth I'm Jewish, and I was on this major spiritual journey, and so I went to Unity for a long time. I tried
Mhm.
whatever. One of my favorite people. This short story. I'd gone to a conference in Ireland in '93 called on spirituality and environment, and this man gets up and he just there was a hush, 5,000 people he commanded, and it was just like this energy of beauty and love. And it was Jack Kornfield of and his loving kindness meditation. I was like, oh, I want to be him. So I'd study his stuff, those kind of things. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So Karen's gotten up back, like, just to tell you about her personality. Our jazz band is playing the blues for her, and she puts on some like silly sunglasses and grabs a kazoo and plays like this amazing like blues thing on a kazoo, and it was so freaking funny. She's like such a wonderful, delightful, joyful. She's like one of my favorite people.
Light
She's so cool.
spirit. Yeah, obviously I learned about her at Unity, otherwise I probably would not have known who she was, so yeah.
She's funny. She's great. She's just got it
She
all.
uplifts me. She uplifts me all the time. And I don't know, do you know who Donna Eden is at all? She's an energy healer.
Sounds familiar.
Okay, so she's been around a long time, and one of her daughters always does an energy dance after she's doing a teaching, and it's usually to a Karen Drucker song. So I'm always really very impressed and love it. So
Yeah, it's Karen's amazing. It's just so cool how many like little things where I feel like our lives are so similar. And then we just met through Melanie's group, which I've talked about Melanie's group. I've been interviewed Melanie on the show, so people know who she is. But
I know. I mean, I feel like, yes, we are going to be connected from now on because you care about healing just like I do, and you're doing this wonderful show and giving people opportunities to learn about new modalities and talk about things that they may not hear about.
yes, so speaking of modalities, do you want to like share like an exercise or something that everyone
Oh,
can try
sure.
like right now, like real time while they're watching the video?
Real time. Okay. Well, first of all, I
Well,
love to
this is
do
pre-recorded, so sort of real time, but
real time. It's okay. So what I really like you to do is we're going to do just a little bit of meditation first.
okay.
I'd love you to close your eyes and just take a breath. You don't have to change your breath or anything right now. And just breathe. And just take another breath. Notice the air coming in and out. Now try and breathe in a little deeper, maybe for a count of 4, and then hold it for 4. And then let it go. I'd like you to be in this wonderful, calm place. So now just imagine that you're going to shake your head from side to side and loosen up, if your neck, or if you need to, spin your head around, whatever works for you, just to loosen that up side to side. Now lift your shoulders and shrug, and just notice how it feels when you just let go. When you're in this space, you just start feeling so much better and calmer. So just notice and say to yourself, you're just going to release the tension that may be in your throat right now, your chest, going up and down your arms. Imagine you're just letting go. And now you're just going to let your body just be aware of what you're feeling. What do you notice? Are you holding any tension in your belly? Just breathe into it and let it go. Down your hips and thighs. And maybe, you start noticing, oh, I'm a little tense in my legs. And, so wiggle your toes, move your, feet up and down. And if you can, do a few circles, ankle circles. Now I would like you to open your eyes and you're feeling it. And we're just going to start this. So I love to do a little thing where I call finger dancing. So it also helps, sort of get you in that joyful, playful place, because what I do is not about serious art. It is about you just playing, exploring, and experimenting. So just sort of go like this, imagine you're dancing, twinkle stars, those kind of things. that kind of thing. So you're just starting to wake yourself up to a little bit of joy. Normally I would have some music playing in the background, but we're talking, so I don't. So now just let that go. And what we're going to do, I'm going to give you scribble and doodle. This is a really easy exercise you can do alone. You can do with your kids. I actually have suggested, if you have a whiteboard at home, to put it up somewhere and just leave some pens out every day, and somebody starts scribbling and everybody keeps adding to it. And at the end of the day, you actually, give it a title. So everybody gets a chance to express themselves. So I would love you to just pick up a pen or a marker if you have one, put it in your non-dominant hand, and you're going to close your eyes. So you cannot judge this. How can you worry about being an artist when you can't see it and you're using your non-dominant hand? Too many people are afraid I'm not an artist. It's not about being an artist. So now I want you to just scribble.
With my eyes closed?
With your eyes closed. Try and use your whole wrist if you can. It depends on the size of your paper, obviously. All right, now I want you to stop. Now, normally I would say you have at least a couple colors of crayons or pens there. So I would have you pick up a second color pen if you have one. I don't have any handy because I didn't know what we were doing. But so if you have one, a different color, now I want you to do the same thing. I want you to close your eyes and use your non-dominant hand and scribble again. Okay, that's good. Now, when you're complete, oftentimes you can play music if you want to be energized or if you've got something. So now I would have you color it in real time. Just start coloring, filling in whatever.
Oh gosh.
All right. So the question is, are you a person who colors in the lines or not?
Yeah, I'm a boundary guy. I'm
All right. Now I'm going to ask you to be uncomfortable and draw outside the lines. Color outside the lines. So I usually, this usually takes, I give people 10 minutes or so to color.
Can I
Because
ask you something?
Sure.
How do you think that because we're talking like with art, there's boundaries or what, how do you think art pertains to building boundaries? Because that's like my little niche in the world is
Building boundaries, setting boundaries. Well, art can do that. I mean, you can work within limits. You can set yourself a timer. You can say, okay, let me try to think how I will phrase this. This is an interesting question. Yes. So you can set timers, you can draw within the lines, but then asking somebody to draw outside the lines when boundaries are so important to them, it's a way to have a conversation. How do you feel? I often do this with couples, or I did, and and have them do that, and they can work on one together. So one person would scribble one color, the other person would scribble the other, and then they would have a conversation as they're coloring it in, and then asking them to color outside the lines. And then you can bring it back to your relationship. How do you feel when I tell you, no, you can't do that? Or when I step outside of the role that I'm used to being in? Maybe I want to go back to work and, you've been putting up some resistance, or I want to change jobs. And so it offers a different way of having a silent conversation almost. It gives you other tools and ways to look at things. Does that make sense to you?
It does, because I think that was one of the first things I noticed when I was like, like coloring within the lines, coloring outside the lines, and how it feels. And I think that's a really cool tool to start tune into your body and how it feels when expressing boundaries to other people or having to articulate boundaries, like just to start to like check in with your body in those situations. Because I feel like that's one thing that I haven't, even though boundaries are my jam, I don't know if I really am as conscious of how it feels to like think of boundaries and articulate boundaries and stuff. So
one of the things I do, and one of which book is it? I think it was in my book. I have like 30 days of different activities to do. And one of them is to actually have a dialogue with your body where you check in and you see how you feel. And you use like an outline of a gingerbread guy.
okay.
And then you say, okay, so where am I feeling tight? What does that mean? Where is it in my body? And then you ask, why are you there? You sort of have a dialogue with that part of yourself. And you could say, oh, it's such a deep commitment to spending time with yourself in a new way. Again, you have this dialogue, and you could also, again, write with your non-dominant hand. So you could have a dialogue, what's going on. And that was Lucia Capiccioni developed that as a tool. And, and then you just dialogue with yourself, and then you ask, what do I need? What do I need to heal? What do I need to make this right? What do I need to, because our body has wisdom, and too often we tune it out.
Yeah. And I wonder, it's interesting to me to think that people that have experienced encroachment on their boundaries tend to be better artists because they have, maybe in some regard, they have no boundaries early on, especially if it's like when childhood trauma type stuff and that you've experienced.
I've never thought about that. I don't know. I don't think I have an opinion.
I wonder if that like sort of plays into the why we have no boundaries in our creativity at the beginning, you know what I mean, to some degree. And then you want to exert a certain amount of control on things that you can control. And so then that like sort of limits you artistically sometimes too.
Well, I think, it depends who you are and where you're at in your life and your journey,
Yeah, I'm sure it's different for everyone.
Giving up perfection, that was a biggie for me. I still struggle with that. I have to be perfect. So, that kind of thing. It's like, oh, you can't finish a painting or you can't begin one because if you can't be perfect, and that comes up. The other piece of it is I'm a multitasker in the sense I don't work on one painting at a time. I work on two. It's just who I am, so that I can stop a story. If I can't figure out the answer to where I need to go, then I'll go work on something else. And that's been my whole life.
Yes.
So,
I resemble this.
Okay. So
very much.
Okay. Yeah. So now you've colored. Okay. Oh, beautiful.
I have paper with writing on it, but there's my little.
There is another piece that uses writing and does it over it like this. There's a whole nother art technique that you would love. So now I want you to take, so you use two colors. Normally you'd be coloring with more color.
I had a black and a blue pen handy. So,
so what I want you to do is write down whatever the feeling is when you look at this, if there's any images that you observed, and then you can take, normally I'd say take the colors like blue mountain, blue waters or blue lagoons or, black hole, whatever. Just write them down, the words that come up for you. And how did you feel while you were doing this? One word, or two.
Okay. I've got like flowers and lilies.
Okay.
Kind of comes to my mind. It kind of like some kind of blue lilies.
All right.
And then feeling was nervous but excited. It's my first time. Like, am I going to get it wrong?
No, there is no wrong here. So do you remember?
It was exciting and fun too,
Oh, thank you. Did you ever do Mad Libs?
Yes.
Okay, so what you're going to do is create a Mad Lib scenario now. You're going to write once upon a time.
Okay.
And you use all those words you just shared with me, and you're going to write a story.
Okay.
Now, oftentimes I have people think of a question before we start, so you then, your subconscious is then working for an answer. So you can do it that way, or just have fun like this. Some of them are the most profound things you've ever heard if you ever do it in a group. It's amazing.
Okay. So like once upon a time, um, there was this field of these blue flowers. They were just field of lilies. It's Switzerland. It's
Why not?
there's a train going by, and the train is going to take you up through the Alps. It's a red train. It's beautiful. It's the one that's on my vision board. And they stop just where I'm standing in this field of flowers. And the train master said, "You can come on. Ooh, but you have to give up something. You have to give up all your worldly possessions, but you can take this train ride of a lifetime. Do you want to do it?" And
Wow.
so I was nervous, but excited. I almost had a tickly feeling inside, and I decided to jump on the train.
Wow. Now
And I
that's
had,
a really profound story. Think about it. What you just said. You're at a place in your life where you're willing to try anything. And, I think that's wonderful. Yes, I mean, that is a great story. And I would suggest you write it up and put it somewhere, because you're going to get opportunities. Again, it's like another piece of your vision. I'm going to get opportunities to get on a train, and just give this up and move and go and explore the world. And yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. That interesting insight into that story.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's not about buying couches today. It's about getting on the train and leaving everything behind.
Right. It was funny too, because right before this conversation, I'd had that conversation with my husband. I was like, well, um, like we might be moving, or we might be staying. And if we move, we might not want to have as much stuff. So maybe not having a couch right now and taking the risk of letting go of our couch. We're also talking about selling off our second car. Because like there's a little risk involved, but maybe there's a trade-off, like that maybe we're not supposed to have these things, and the universe is just giving us this little nudge to release some things so that it's easier when we need to move or whatever else comes next. So there it
All
is.
right. There it is, and I wasn't privy to that conversation. So
No, I know, it's so funny
that's
that
why I
you
say this
said
is
that.
a really profound activity. You don't know where it's going to go, because it taps into your inspiration, your spiritual part of you. It taps into your subconscious in ways you can't even imagine, because that's what I love about it. And it's a great way to get children excited about things and do an imagine things, and all this stuff. Because when we were kids, we had a great imagination. It was like, I'm going to be an astronaut, I'll be a ballet dancer, I was going to be Ray Rubin. And then somewhere along the way, some teacher said, no, sit down, stop daydreaming, blah blah, and we all did that. And part of my mission is to tell people, no, you don't have to live with that. You are creative human beings. You have that birthright, and you may show it in different ways. It's the way you garden, parent, code, even. It can be in so many ways. It doesn't mean you have to be able, you sit down with a pen and paper or anything. So I that's part of what I want to share with people. So, and this tool they found, especially with children, if you can get them using their imagination, coloring and things like that, it will help them become better students. So they've done a lot of studies on that. As adults, coloring books for adults are an amazing tool. They just, calm you down. I had one client who was an accountant, and she had her own firm. And every season, it's like, oh my God, I can't stand it. Get rid of it, get through the season. So we discussed it, and she got a coloring book, and she used to close her office door, and she was embarrassed to say, I need this time for myself. And I brought her to this place to say, how about you share it with your staff? And she said, oh my God, it opened up the world. She went and got coloring books and markers and colored pencils and left them in the break room. So anytime anybody was stressed, they could go relax. And it changed the whole tenure of the office and the experience.
That's awesome for relationships, to invite people to join you rather than tell them, no, I need to go be by myself right now or
Right.
whatnot. That's part of my like kind of boundaries philosophy too, is just instead of telling, it's like, no, it's more like, here's the vision that I have for my life. Why don't you see what part you can play? The role that you're playing right now is not necessary. But maybe one of these other roles that I need help
Yeah.
with could suit you.
Oh, it's very interesting how you're phrasing that. I'm getting a kick out of it. I can't wait to see where this all goes.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So, thank you for sharing these exercises with me and with everyone on this call that's viewing this call. It are more exercises in, you've written 4 books, so I assume that they're in some of your
Oh
books.
yeah, I have. Look, you have to contact me directly. This is not on Amazon. It's called Discover the Creative Edge. 30 days to enrich your daily life, and it's got all these 30 activities. If also I have some that are not in here that I've developed for families that I can send to them if they want to contact me at Rae at thewinningadventure.com. Yeah, and I also have a PDF of my book, this one. It's called Art for My Heart. This was actually developed after I had an art school for a while. And I decided, okay, it's going to be the kind of art school I want. It's not about creating great art. It's about, personal development, basically, and going into these different topics. And so this book is about out of print, but I do have PDFs if people, are interested.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's what everybody uses anyway nowadays.
Right. So yeah.
Very cool. So thank you so much. And I hope everybody takes advantage of this and contacts you. And again, repeat the email address again. I'm still going to have the link
at thewinningadventure.com. My website is thewinningadventure.com. And I also have raeluskin.com where you can see my art and my books. They're really on there. So it's RAELUSKIN.
Awesome. And obviously, wherever you're watching this video, look below and you're going to see the links to everything that we've talked about here. And so you'll be able to reach out to Rae personally and buy her books and start practicing, hop on the train. That's what I say.
On the train and say, it's my time. It is up to us to be the conductors, of the train. If we're not going to conduct our own lives, then we're victims and we're at the beck and call of other people. But if we take charge and we say, this is us, we choose this life and this path. And even if we don't know where it's going to end up, it's okay. There's a big piece of, I think, of any personal growth saying, okay, it's all right to make mistakes. It's all right to fail. It's just opportunities to learn more.
Failure is a lesson you could share with everyone for the rest of your life. It's part of your legacy. It's a great thing.
Right. And I mean, who would have ever said, I'm really glad my grandfather abused me, but I became an activist because of that. I interviewed 200 people around the country who are leaders and using creativity to make a difference in their communities, their world, that kind. Who knew? I mean, that I would never have done that otherwise. So there are opportunities in pain for growth, pain to purpose. That was one of the reasons I wanted to do what I do and tell my story so people have hope. You're not condemned to your past. You have a choice to make it the future you want.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for those words.
Thank you. I love this. This was a great conversation.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, everyone. It has been another wonderful Wellbeing Wednesday. It's probably one of my favorites so far. And I hope you all take advantage of this opportunity to reach out to Rae, and all of you have a fabulous rest of your week. Goodbye.